I'm Bill Perkins. I think the primary place where I've become successful or made the money is running a hedge fund, trading energy futures and derivatives. We're going to be talking about risk and how do we look at risk and, you know, what formed my idea of risk in life, not only as a trader, but just generally in life. And at a young age, I wanted to be in a field where my time was leveraged, where I could make the most amount of capital so I can get girls and guns and cars versus my time, right? That's the dream of a 21-year-old at the time. But generally that philosophy is that, hey, what's the worst that can happen? I generally come from an optimistic point of view, and it was like, well, I could be a waiter or a garbage person, and my ego really isn't attached too much to that outcome. That's a good life. I've been pretty much broke my whole life, so how bad could it be? Emotionally, she says no. I say I love you first. What's the worst that can happen? You've been rejected 1,000,000 times in a bar before. Why not let your heart out? And so I've always looked at risk not alone in a vacuum, but in the reward. What is that ratio? What can I achieve with this amount of risk? And what is the real pain? A lot of times the real pain, people think about the money. It's really not the money, it's their ego, the looking like an idiot, failing, having to start over, the pain of rejection or the pain of going to the gym or whatever it is. And so, I wrote a book called Die with Zero, and it was really about what am I going to do with my life? Because the destination is the same for everyone. And so it's really about the ride and what kind of ride do I want? And how am I going to achieve this ride? And what resources am I going to deploy in order to attempt to get there? And so, playing sports and all the cliches and things that came into that is like, okay, I wanted to leave everything on the field of life. That meant in every area of my life, somebody just asked a question, like, how do you, kind of stole some of my thunder, is like, what is your attitude towards risk? And my attitude is, take as much risk as you possibly can in every single field, just whatever that is, and then go add a little bit more, because humans are risk averse. We are generally designed to survive, not to thrive. And everybody here who started a company, who's chasing their dream, who's whether that be romantic, financial, spiritual, they have a risk aversion. We are not wired to thrive. We want to thrive, and those people out there taking these risks, you thrive. And here's the other benefit, before we get into Q&A, so we don't ruin some of the questions. The way I think about risk is that when you chase your own fulfillment to the best of your ability, not only do you have a more fulfilling life, but you unleash others. Everything that we're using, from the tassels on your shoes to your phone, is somebody's life's work. Somebody along the chain risked everything to make your life easier. From your jeans, somebody started a jeans company, to the chair, to everything. And we are flourishing, thriving on the dreams of others, the people who took the risk to make this environment happen. And so you'll see that immediately in your life, but you'll also be part of this fabric of this story of the time of our period of making the world better. And so that's the way I think of risk. I think it is a necessary thing for thriving, not for survival, but for thriving. And we're humans. We're not here to survive. We're here to thrive. With that, Kate, you want to talk
Thank
about
you. Yeah, please. Okay, so Bill, you're a trader. You've been a founder. We've got Skylar Capital, SkyFi, Synmax. You are a professional poker player. You are an author, a published author. And let me say, Luke and I have both seen Die with Zero on the bestseller list in Japan. So you're an international hit across the world. How do you look at this, and how do you balance your gut with quantitative assessment, especially early on when you're taking those big risks, when you don't have the capital to fall back on?
Yeah, I think, in trading, it's a lot easier because it's just numbers, right? It's risk reward ratios. Is this acceptable? VAR, volatility. When you're talking about your life, like, wow, I'm going to spend 2 years writing a book when I could be doing something else with my family or my kids, it's kind of thematically, I start to think about what impact do I want to have in my life for each period. And so for some people, they're in a season of life of like, hey, I want to go build a career and learn, robotics and contribute to defense and robotics. For some people, they're like, I'm in an area of my life where I really want to spend time with my family, and I'll invest in robotics, right? And so I kind of go to like 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 feet. Like, what do I want on this period of my life? And then what is appropriate risk to be taken based on that theme?
Okay. And so, in that, what is the most counterintuitive insight about risk that most people miss that you think you've uncovered through?
I think people tend to overestimate the downside. Um, they sit, they think about it, and they go, okay, if I lose, I'm going to lose X dollars, and I'm going to be broken, or I'm out there. And they tend to underestimate the upside. They miss the intangibles, which sometimes are greater than the actual success story, the monetary success story. I'll give you an example. I went into El Salvador to do a development project to import LNG. We actually won the bid. It got killed by the government, et cetera. It was a rousing failure. It was a spectacular failure over many, many, many years of work. But we became subject matter experts in development, okay, which allowed me later to pass the hat and do one of the largest solar developments in Nevada, California on a term deal, right, which was amazing, right? But it took the school of hard knocks in El Salvador to get there, right? It was part of the journey. And so at the time, I was like, okay, I'm risking this much money, pull the plug. It was 4 years of my life, 5 years of my life, and way more money than I wanted to lose, and very emotionally disappointing, which set up me for one of the biggest success stories in development I've had in my entire life. And I completely underestimated that in the beginning until it was over. And then when I took a step back and I looked at all the other failures in my life, I was like, wait a minute, that wasn't really a failure, that was a lesson, right? And now can I take that lesson that I learned and leverage that in the future?
I think that's awesome. And I would love to pull a thread of, you said one of the ways that you function is you pull your ego out of it.
Yeah.
How?
That's tough.
Yeah.
It's really tough. I think I've said this before, like I was born in '69, just right post out civil rights. My parents were in the generation where, the laws were racist against them. It was legal to discriminate. And so when you grow up in Jersey City, kind of, your teen years and that, you have a certain, I don't give a F what people think, because it's part of the culture, right? Like when people are like, you're this, or they have these stereotypes about you, you learn to insulate yourself from that. And I think a good parenting is trying to help your kids get over that period of like, hey, nobody really cares about you. It doesn't matter what they think, because they're always self-conscious. And that became a superpower later in life because I really don't mind looking like an idiot. A lot of people are very afraid of looking like an idiot or doing something stupid or failing, right? More so than they're willing to admit. I say I don't care about what people think unless it affects my higher priorities, and that's it. And so that unleashes me to try things that other people would not even think about.
Yeah.
Not even think about, because they don't want to lose where their relative status is in life, amongst their peers, amongst their own selves, because we're our own worst critics, right? I don't know. I think everybody's here been like, oh, I'm such an idiot, or I've done this so wrong. I'm like, how could I, and we have a lot of negative self-talk. And I'm like, live and learn. I'm a human, And so it takes a lot of practice. And I think I had practice just in the environment and the time period I was born, is to not care what other people think.
So, kind of keeping with the thread of culture, looking at just America, given the theme, do you see America in its current state as risk takers? Is that a small part of America? Like, how would you assess the risk taking of?
I think it's skewed, and I think, wow, I don't want to go on a super tangent. I think a lot of the things we have in the distribution of wealth and what's going on here is that we have a contingent of people that are willing to take wild risks, and risk equals reward. And so we're seeing these windfall successes, right? Starting in a garage, and then the next thing you know, it's $1 trillion company. Sticking with GPUs and gaming, and now it's a $4 trillion company, right? Trying to disrupt the space industry. Like, who the fuck does that? You know what I mean? Like, And now it's this ridiculous company and they're dominating space and Starlink. And there's hundreds of other examples of that. And then we have this contingent of people that either by choice or by training who want to be, they want to be first paid, guaranteed X, and this is the life, and that's perfectly okay. Um, but I think we need more innovators and risk takers that are willing to risk 10 years of their life on some crazy idea,
Yeah.
right? And realize that they're still going to be okay, right? You don't just, they don't bring you to the guillotine when you fail. You just don't get it. And so I'm not saying that if you take the risk, you're going to make it, but you're at least one of the salmon trying to swim upstream,
Yeah.
right? Lots of us will die.
Yeah.
Lots of us will die on that journey, and maybe it's your next venture that you get to go up the stream, but you need to be swimming upstream.
Awesome. So in that vein, we would love to take questions from the audience if anyone wants to ask. Duncan, we got a gentleman here in a hat.
Hey, Bill.
Hey.
Longtime fan. I was wondering if you could talk to your journey from switching from like trading oils futures and that aspect of risk to switching to like startup investing in things that you have more control over, but maybe a higher risk or less control.
Oh, you think you have control over your startup? No, I just no. I think in trading, it's structured, right? The commodities markets are structured, the products are structured, and so the variables are they're many, but they're very simple. In starting your startup, when a key person goes sick, that's not like part of the structure, right? And there's a lot more variables, a lot more degrees of freedom to move. But I got to the point where I was like, I have these ideas, right, or these frustrations. I want to make something better. And that I am in the fortunate position to have the capital, the time, and know people to build it. And so, if not me, who? And so, it became not even a choice, right? I think, it's the same thing with the restaurant. It's like, I am fortunate enough to have made it to not care about the rent. So I can do something extremely creative. If I don't do this, who's going to do this, right? I think it's almost a responsibility. And so when I have an idea where I think it's going to have an impact on the world, and that's like part of my value stack, it's not a choice. I don't have a choice because then I'm being a coward to my values. And I don't want to be a fucking coward. You know what I mean? So and when I am not a coward, even if I don't succeed, I unleash other people and maybe they'll go succeed. They're out there talking and understanding and becoming aware of the issues. And maybe, in the relay game of life, you don't know if you're the finisher or the starter. You just run. Someone told me that once and I'm like, that is how I want to live my life. And so when something comes to me that speaks to me in my value system and I have like a certain skill set or asset to bring my resources to bear the problem, I must run the race. I love to be the finisher and get the medal, but it doesn't matter. I must run the race. And so the transition was just whatever school of hard knocks or whoever I needed to hire to bring on. And we have a saying, it's always an HR problem, because I'm not the tip of the spear, right? Like I'm not like the best thermodynamics guy, engineer, orbital science guy, manager of people, etc. But I am a guy that can like enroll people in my vision, get them on my squad, and let them go crush. And so that's how I think about it.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, so I want to jump in because you said something with the restaurant. So you recently opened a restaurant. It's absolutely stunning. I'll put the pitch out there, Jupiter Supper Club. And you said you had the space to be creative. How, when you are on the front side of the hustle, and how do you, or how did you, or how do you propose people integrate that creativity, right? When you're just like, and I'm not talking about a 9 to 5, let's talk startup world. It's early on, you're trying to get everything out there, you have a small team, you're crushing it. How do you see creativity playing a piece into that overall success? And at what point, from the concept of an idea to the success of a company, how do you see that creativity ebb and flow?
Wow, I think it's probably my worst answered question coming up. But I think there's like the basic blocking and tackling that like startup founders need to do. And before you start, doing fancy backstrokes, you got to learn to swim and survive, just like not drown. Okay. And once you're doing that, though, with in mind, you're going to be like, what if, there's going to be a lot of what if analysis. If we ever get to this resource point, we can try this experiment.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think in everything, you see it in the Slack channel, it's a lot of fuck around to find out. And it's when do I get those chips where I can make that creative bet? And then that one loses. Okay, let's put it back. When do I get the next time that we can make the creative bet? And then, there's all kinds of management tools that are out there. It's like, what has the most impact, right? And what is the easiest to do, right? What are the golden behaviors that we want to do when we get that chance, when we get there, when we get that first $10 in revenue, are we going to take that $10 and redeploy it into this thing that might be a home run? Okay, it's not, we didn't die. Let's keep going. And you always are looking for that, beyond blocking and tackling, what can we do to make this thing, supersize it, go exponential?
Awesome. All right, back to the audience.
Hey, so just kind of a switch, but talking about health, right? So there's certain people like, let's say Peter Attia, he's someone who I kind of look up to, and so those people, I call them like health nerds. They focus a lot of their lives on, just wanting to maximize their health span, etc. Do you think of that as a concept you've discussed in your book is like life energy? Do you think of that as like they're adding to their life energy, or like it's an extension of their life energy? Do you think of that as a worthwhile like endeavor, or do you think that they're I guess just like wasting resources to an extent because they're not living life in like a risk averse way, maximizing their experiences, etc.?
I think it's always to your value system. So, your wealth, your health, and your time are three variables to drive one thing, your fulfillment. And so some people get it wrong. They think their life is to drive the money, right? To maximize wealth. Or they think their life is to maximize health or to maximize time. And that's not that way. It's to drive fulfillment. And fulfillment is how you design it. Your value system. It depends on, your culture, your value systems, et cetera. I'm agnostic to what that is. And so health is a very important variable. It's the most important variable for your ability to enjoy this organic spacesuit roaming through Earth. That being said, my life is not here to be the most in shape, badass motherfucker there ever existed, right? It's to have the most fulfilling life according to my value system. And so that's going to necessitate a certain amount of time put into health, right? And so when I went on Peter's podcast and we talked about it, it's like, Peter has this thing called the Centenarian Olympics. It's a survey, and he says, pick these 10 things you want to be able to do in the last 10 years of your life, okay? And then from that, we can be like, this is where you need to be now in order to have this, right? And so we're aligning our health goals with our fulfillment. So if I want to be able to pick up a small child and go for a long walk, if I want to be able to have vigorous sex, in the last 10 years of life, if I want to be able to do X, Y, and Z, okay, then this is where I need to be in my health, and that's the trade-off I make, right? So I think it's a trade-off depending on your value systems. It's like, hey, if I want to go heli skiing at 90, okay, you better be a badass motherfucker right now, top 0.1%, and spending a lot of time doing all kinds of crazy things, right? For me, just another thing is like I was doing the Israeli study where you go into a hyperbaric chamber for like an hour, okay, or hour and a half, and you come out. So it takes an hour to dive. You go down for an hour. It takes like a half an hour to come up, okay, and it took me an hour to drive there. And I had to do it like each week. And then I started calculating the hours, and I was like, oh, I'd rather just die a month earlier. Right? I'm not going to give up this prime areas of my life driving around in a car, okay, to be able to, walk an extra mile at 90. I'd rather just die an hour earlier and enjoy my life now. That's not a fulfilling equation for me. But for other people, it might be, right? I don't want to mock it, right? I just want you not to be on autopilot and be thinking about that trade-off.
Other questions?
Hey, Bill.
Thanks.
Talk to us about your journey from being a hedge fund magnet to SkyFi to SynMax, what took you from digging for gold and saying, hey, this is the next gen and I need to be a part of it?
Yeah, so hit on it. What took me from hedge fund to here? So in the hedge fund world, you play a role, but it's basically digging for gold. And I was getting tired and old, and I wanted to sell shovels, not dig for gold, right? I was kind of like wanting to move into something else, and I also wanted to have an impact. And so in the beginning, I was like, I think all the tools I build for trading, right? And I was using satellite data at the time for trading. I was like, I could just build these tools and sell them to other people because I'm one of the, in my little fishbowl, I'm one of the top traders. The tools I use, other traders will find value in them. And then I was also in terms of impact, and I think the ocean is the threats to the ocean is the biggest problem we have in our world today. A lot of people might talk about air and CO2. I think it's actually the ocean. And so I was like, I think the tools that I can build, that I've been building to manage risk inside trading, I will be successful in putting these tools out and developing them in another industry. And so we were looking at the insurance industry, because they have more value at risk than I am. Like a teeny little hedge fund. I'm a gnat on the screw of the machine, even though I'm a relatively larger fish in my world, and that they would want to buy these products. Startups never go the way you think they're going to go, right? So when I went out into the world to try and acquire satellite data, I realized I'd rather pull my eyelashes out. It was extremely difficult. It took me an ungodly amount of time to give a satellite company $1.8 million just to buy data when I was at a hedge fund. And so SkyFi was born out of the frustration of this process and realizing that there are other people that can do even more interesting things with satellite data and have an impact on the world if I just made the process easy. If I made it easy, made the UX, made it frictionless, made it like you order a pizza or a car or everything else you do in this world, satellite industry wasn't that way. It was very science focused and government focused, not customer focused. At the same time, this company was focused on ocean health, using satellite data really to make an indent. The company SynMax is really a giant Rube Goldberg machine to make a dent in illegal fishing. But you can't start a company and be like, I want to make a dent in illegal fishing. People are like, how do we make the money, right? But the same tools to make a dent in illegal fishing also are counter narcotics and sanctions violations and tracking military vessels and tracking subs and global maritime omniscience and border violation. And so that can make money while I focus on, my ultimate goal of making a dent on illegal fishing. And so just the phase of my life that I'm in, where I want to make an impact on the world, not in a way that that I feel my expertise lends itself, and I can bring people in and enroll them in the vision. That was kind of that journey. It's kind of like a phase of life, and how can I make an impact?
So to pull on that, I often say that working at SkyFi, the last time I was this professionally fulfilled was combat, right? Combat, because nobody's coming in to save you,
No.
right? It's a small team, dedicated mission, exhausted but passionate, right? I think you have to have a little bit wrong with you to be at an early stage startup or found one.
Yeah.
So you've talked about personal resilience, but you've also built really amazing teams. So how do you, especially at that early stage when things are crazy and there's so many failures and you're trying and failing and maybe you got a little bit here, how do you build resilient teams in order to accomplish this alongside you?
Wow, I think I've been very lucky. Obviously you want to tap your network, but I think the main thing is enrolling people in the vision. Most of the people you're going to be hiring that are going to take you across the finish line, they're all badasses. They can get a job anywhere. And I tell people that it's like, you got to want to be here, right? One time we were hiring people and it was in the Slack channel, and they're like, oh, they're considering this job versus Facebook, whatever. I was like, whoop, stop, needle scratch. If you're even considering us versus a Facebook or something like that, this isn't the job for you. It's not the job for you. And I'm not saying that in a mean way. I'm just saying that, hey, you want the stock options and the thing and the safe thing, and it's all about the money. This is a we can die at any day type of company. We have this lofty vision, and we're going against an industry that's entrenched in its ways, and we're trying to shake things up. Like, you are not the person to be here. You're brilliant, but this is not for you. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you need to be fulfilled, right? And so, building a team is one, finding these badasses, but enrolling them in your vision. And once they're on vision, then I just get the fuck out of the way. Like, my favorite thing to do is fire myself because I'm rarely the best at the thing, right? Like, somebody else is the best at the thing. So my job is to be like, hey, dude, you're a badass. Come on my vision. This is the vision. And here's what can happen here's the impact we're going to have. And here's the money you're going to make. And here's the freedom you get and the risk taking you get to take. You like, get on my team. And they're like, yeah, I'm on your fucking team. I'm like, all right, go. I'm out of your way. Right. And that's what I do. And like, people are attracted to the vision, the freedom, and the ability to take risk, that agency that they have in their lives to like control the destiny. And so I think that's the way I've been able to do it, is like, hey, we're going to give you the resources. Here's the resources. My friends they're idiots like me. They love to risk money. So here they go. Go forth and do good things, And I think that's very attractive to people, to be enrolled in a vision, because the people you're going to want to hire, they can get a job tomorrow. They don't need you. They don't need your stupid startup or your whatever. They want your vision. They need that vision. They need that purpose. And that's when they come on and join you and go and crush it.
Awesome. With that, we're going to wrap up. So thank you, Bill, so much for taking the time.
Thank you.